Have you ever been so overwhelmed by emotion that you made really bad choices? Maybe you found yourself eating too much or doing something that kind of messed you up, or you were so overwhelmed by emotion that you couldn't do anything at all. Well, I'm going to give you three basic tips that you can do in the moment that can help you manage overwhelming emotion. Hi, I'm Greg Cason, and this is Off the Couch. Sometimes we get so emotional that we find ourselves doing things that we regret later, or so emotional that we find that we can't do anything. We just stay inside or pull the blanket over our head. Sometimes we react just from emotion rather than our own heads or whatever would do us best in the situation. But there are three things I'm going to introduce you to that can actually help you manage those emotions. But right now, we want to look at some of the things that you might do to manage the emotions that might be hurting you in this moment. Maybe there are things like when you get very angry, you might yell at your partner, which is usually counterproductive. Or you might even get so angry that you get violent or storm out of the house. Those are very bad. Or maybe you get so upset that you find yourself eating extra amount, or maybe even gambling, or maybe even shopping. Usually those kinds of behaviors are trying to manage the emotion in the moment, and they don't help you. They actually make matters worse, even though they kind of feel good right in the moment. Sometimes we get so emotional that we want to have sex, or we don't want to have sex. Our emotions could determine all kinds of behaviors. And even some people, when they get very emotional, they attention switch. So maybe they're talking about something and it starts to upset them. So they talk about something else until that starts to upset them, and then they talk about something else. Or when they're at home, they might attention switch between 4 or 5 books, or continually switch on the TV and look at different TV shows. Our emotions are there to help us. They're there to guide us. They're there to support us. Emotions are information. Emotions are there to help us feel good in life. They're there to help us lead a full and developed life, and also there to help us connect with others. But what do you do when your emotions get overwhelming? So there are 3 techniques that you can use in the moment to help you with your emotions. You know, sometimes our emotions get too much. It's sort of like very, very loud music that's blaring in our ears. And these fixes will help just turn down the volume a little bit so that you can actually do what you intend to do and lead you to a better place. When your emotions are too loud, it's just like too loud music, and it's going to really interrupt you. So here are the 3 techniques. The first one's called the tip technique. The second one is opposite action. And the third one is time out. Let's start with the tip technique. Now, the tip technique is actually 3 different techniques all put together. Tip actually stands for temperature, intensity, and pressure. Now let's start with why that technique would even work. Have you ever noticed that maybe when you're very upset and then you get in the shower, that after the shower you feel a little bit better? Or when maybe you're feeling quite sad and you wrap yourself with a very heavy blanket and maybe drink a hot cup of tea, that soothes you and helps you to feel better? Well, the tip technique really plays on those dynamics: temperature, intensity, and pressure. Let me go over the first one. That's temperature. When you can change your body temperature, it actually helps change your emotion. We actually don't think about it very much, but our emotions are connected to our entire system. Our emotions are connected to our thoughts, they're connected to our behaviors, and they're also connected to our body, the physiological sensations in our body. So if we can change some of those sensations in the moment, we'll actually feel better. So the temperature is very easy. You can do what I just suggested, which is get in the shower. Let's say you're feeling very sad and depressed or even anxious. Maybe a nice warm shower can help you feel better. Certainly a warm bath can really help relax you if you're feeling very tense. And that can just help you ground and become in the moment and really help let go of the day. But let's say you're feeling very angry. Actually, hot water probably wouldn't help all that much. What you want to do actually is get into a cold shower when you're feeling very angry. Also, the cold can really play on a bunch of different things. When people are feeling very emotional, sometimes a good thing to do is to take a cold water washcloth and dab it on the back of your neck, dab it on your head, maybe even to stick your hands in a tub filled with ice with cold water just for a few minutes, and that'll help to adjust your temperature. Or do what ladies used to do back in the 50s when they wanted to close their pores. They would take out a large bowl, fill it with ice, put water in it, and then dip their face in it for 10 or 15 seconds. Just doing that action will start to decrease your intensity of emotion in that moment and help you to feel a lot better. Another one, perhaps, is if you're feeling sad, just as I suggested before, making a warm cup of tea or cocoa or some kind of warm drink, even warm milk, and just holding that cup in your hand. That action of holding it in your hand will start to soothe you and help you to feel better. And then the sipping of the hot tea will actually help you feel better as well. And maybe my favorite one, if you're feeling very angry, if you have a pool in your house, if you're lucky enough to have a pool or access to a pool, sometimes it's nice to just take off your clothes and jump in the pool. That sudden change of temperature will help you to cool down immediately and help you to feel better. Now, this isn't a fix completely. It doesn't fix what's going on in your head. It doesn't fix what's going on in the environment or what's coming up. What it does is just help you to manage the emotion in that moment, literally to turn down the volume on the emotion. Now let's go to number 2, which is intensity. Intensity, also just like it sounds, intensity is when you really just got to do something very intensely. This is probably my favorite one because when I'm feeling very upset, sometimes a good thing to do is really just to sweat it out. Maybe to go to the gym, to run, to do maybe an exercise class, but maybe an easy one to do that's maybe in the house. Let's say you're stuck in the house, it's cold weather outside, or you just don't want to go outside, is just to do a wall sit. If anyone's done a wall sit, they know how painful they are and how difficult they are. And doing a full minute with a wall sit is very difficult. So a wall sit is literally where you back up against a wall and you sit against the wall as if you are sitting in a chair and just sit there. I can demonstrate it here. You basically sit down. Oh, I can't do it on camera, but there you go. It's just where you back up against the wall and you sit down against the wall and you wait. Maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds, but it can go on much longer, up to a minute, and that intensity can really help turn down the volume on the emotion. And the last one is pressure. Pressure is when you put pressure against something or have pressure put on you. I mentioned a heavy blanket. If we've all perhaps gotten into bed and had a lot of blankets on top of us, sometimes it feels very warm and cozy. That helps us just to relax. And of course now on the market are things called weighted blankets. They're blankets that are very heavy, and you can put those on top and you'll actually feel very much better, more of a cocoon around your body. Sometimes, though, the pressure can be external, that you're putting pressure on something else. And a good one to do is just pressing your hands together like this, pressing your hands really tightly. This can really help. Or taking out a stress ball and really squeezing that stress ball, that can actually help you feel much better. So temperature, intensity, and pressure. That'll help you turn down the volume on your emotions. The second technique is called opposite action. That's literally where you do the opposite of the destructive impulse you have. Now, what's a destructive impulse? Well, it can be all those things we talked about. It could be yelling at your partner. It could be eating too much or going into the refrigerator, raiding the refrigerator. Maybe it's doing something like isolating or staying in the house. You literally are trying to do the opposite action of those destructive impulses. So let's go with the first one. Let's go with yelling at your partner. If you feel like arguing and yelling with your partner, maybe something you can do, as opposed to saying that destructive thing, that thing that could really lead into an intense argument, you could just go up to your partner and give him a kiss. And if it's really bad, give him a hug and a kiss. But just do something to really put you in a different space. Another opposite action to take is eating. When you feel like eating, don't do the eating. But when you feel like eating, and going and raiding the refrigerator. Maybe doing the opposite, which is doing some kind of exercise where you're not able to eat. That can be an indoor exercise, but I think it's really good to get yourself out of the kitchen and out of the house. Maybe take a walk around the block, maybe take the dog for a walk, or maybe even go for a jog. All of that can be really helpful. And maybe the last one that I talked about was isolating. Instead of isolating or staying indoors and not talking to anyone, the opposite impulse or the opposite thing you can do is to get together with a friend. So maybe getting together is going to require some kind of contact. So maybe even besides a text or some kind of electronic communication, maybe you pick up the phone and give your friend a call. That opposite action is actually going to have you engage with another human being and get together with them, at least on the phone, and that'll be helpful because when you're talking to somebody, you're not isolating. When you're connecting with another person, you're not isolating. Opposite action is really helpful because it employs the psychological element where there's something we call cognitive dissonance. Because we're doing this opposite thing, our brain literally tells us, wait a minute, these two things are incompatible, so maybe you have to change the feeling or change your intention or change your belief a particular way in order to accommodate the new behavior. So basically, if you are angry at your partner and you want to yell at that person, if you give him a kiss, give him a hug, maybe he's not so bad, you don't feel quite as bad. Now, it's going to be really bad if you can't hide your emotions and you're just kind of cranky about it, or you tell your partner you're doing opposite action. Those aren't very helpful. You just got to keep it to yourself and do the action, and I'm sure this will be quite helpful. And let's go to the third one, which is timeout. Now, this isn't your kid's timeout, this is adult timeout. But timeout's really a special one. It's one I really like to use. When I'm feeling very upset and I know what's happening inside of me, let's say I'm feeling very angry or sad or anxious, I know my physiology is changing, and I know that I'm probably not good, especially to talk with someone else or be with someone else. Sometimes what I need to do in those times is just take myself out of the scene for a minute. Let's say if you're very angry or upset or you've had a really hard day, all you need is just about 20 to 30 minutes to change your emotion. So as opposed to your kids' timeout where you're going into a situation where you remove all positive reinforcement, this is adult timeout. We want to fill it with some positive reinforcement, but I suggest a very particular thing. So when you remove yourself from a situation and you go into a positive timeout, maybe something you can do is to do something that you find comforting to you. Maybe that's watching an old TV show that you like to watch all the time, maybe a series you like to watch, or an old movie that you've liked to watch, or listen to music that you know. I especially recommend music that you know the words to so you can sing along. Maybe if you're into sports, you can watch a sports program because that can be often very calming. Or even reading a magazine, taking a walk, especially around a familiar place, meditating. Any of these things can help you to just take that time out. And why the 20 to 30 minute window? It's because we actually find that people physiologically, especially when they're feeling very heated, that they can take their temperature down fairly naturally just by distracting themselves during that 20 to 30 minute time. If you find yourself remaining angry or upset after that 20 to 30 minute time, chances are what you're doing in your head is keep re-indoctrinating yourself to the things that make you angry. You keep telling yourself the same things over and over. That's why I really like if you can go into, when you're taking your time out, to go with something familiar, because that can really suck you in and pull you toward it, rather than something new that you don't really have all that much interest in and that you'll probably distract away from and just listen to your own thoughts. So think about all the familiar things you have around, the familiar movies, TV shows. Think back to the opposite action about things you like to do that are maybe the opposite of things of your destructive impulses. And think about the three things we talked about at the beginning, which was the temperature, intensity, and pressure. It's actually good right now to think of what techniques you would use and in what situations, and then to have those ready to go, especially if you're feeling very upset. Because when we're in the moment that we're very upset, it's really hard for us to turn down the volume because we generally can't even find the volume button. But if you think about it now, think about what actions to take, it's actually going to help you to be able to handle the emotion in the moment. And don't think these are fixes forever for every emotion. All it's helping you to do is to handle your emotion in the moment. You may need longer-term help with your emotions, maybe going to therapy or doing other work on yourself to help you to be able to handle your emotions long-term and to regulate your emotions long-term. These are just to help you in that moment to get you through. But until then, we'll work on those things that can help us have better behaviors in the moment and have a happier life in the moment, which can lead to a happier life overall. I'm Dr. Greg Cason, and this is Off the Couch.